Welcome to the Where Humanity Meets Technology podcast.
Your company is forever going to be at risk.
Cybersecurity does impact us all.
That is the way cybersecurity breaches occur.
What is that one aspect that keeps you up at night?
We are much more exposed than before.
This is our podcast.
Can provide great customer service in a secure way.
That is just like spot on.
Cybersecurity today is out of control.
I believe infinite innovation.
The unknown risk is what's so important there.
Understanding the context is a totally different thing altogether.
Excellent information.
Where we talk to business leaders about cybersecurity, data management, and advanced digital solutions to provide strategies to increase the profitability of your company.
Thanks for everything, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Hello, everyone. My name is Maurice Hamilton. I want to welcome everyone back to our podcast, the podcast we named Where Humanity Meets Technology, because there's a lot of things happening out there, a lot of events, a lot of movement in the technology industry these days. And we want to talk about how humanity and technology are intersecting, how they're changing our lives very, very quickly here. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is Kurt Stein. Kurt and I had the opportunity to meet about a year and a half ago, and we've become pretty good friends here. And Kurt's actually another expert in the field of information technology, and he's going to talk to us today a little bit about digital transformation. So Kurt, I want to welcome you to the podcast and really happy to have you here today.
Excellent. Maurice, thanks for having me. Hello to your audience. Thanks so much.
They're happy to listen to what you have to say or watch what you have to say. So this is going to be a really great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. So Kurt, let me begin with the first question today I have for you. And I like to start the podcast and actually talk about in the beginning. Everything we actually have is one of those conversations, which came first, the chicken or the egg, or you always have to talk about the core. When did it start? So tell me a little bit about your career, how you actually got into the information technology arena, and we'll take a conversation from there.
This is great. I'll expand upon it as well. I'll take you through kind of how I got here, and hopefully for those that are unsure of what they want to do, they'll get some value out of it. And for those that are already on that trajectory, perhaps they'll get some insights out of that as well. So absolutely, I am a person that's about, I truly believe in having coaches and mentors. I mean, I believe that if you have an opportunity to do that now, no matter what age you are, it's important, right? They help you to navigate you in the right direction. I did not have that when I was younger. So obviously I am a big proponent of it now, because if you watch sports, somebody will help you correct your swing. They'll tell you, don't do that. I've seen that done before and you can improve it like this. I mean, it's just a very wonderful thing to have somebody to guide you along the way so you don't make the mistakes. So if we go back to how I got to where I am, it was purely by accident. It's not like I grew up building computers or taking computers apart or watching sci-fi and thinking, oh wow, Star Wars is the most amazing thing. That wasn't me. And there's a lot of people with an IT background that absolutely love Star Wars. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the concepts, but that wasn't all consuming to me. So now the question becomes, well, then how did you end up where you are? And it was purely by chance. So my background's the following. In high school, I didn't like high school. It was okay. I didn't love it. I wasn't one of those that really enjoyed it. I played sports in high school, played lacrosse. That I enjoyed. I enjoyed the competitive aspect of sports, and I played lacrosse. And then I went to college. In 1990 is when I started college. And I actually started at SUNY Farmingdale, which is a two-year college, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my family didn't have the money to send me, to pay for college. I had to pay for it myself. Yeah. So I had to make choices that revolved around how can I get college, but how can I afford it myself? And then how can I, move forward in college itself? So, I mean, that's important to people that can't afford it. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I was in that boat. So I started to get creative. I went to SUNY Farm. It was only a 2-year, and I went for just liberal arts to get a better understanding of what do I want to do. And in order to pay for college, I actually was working at UPS, and I worked inside it was called the hub. So every package you get delivered to you has to be brought into a building, and then they sort it and they move it to trucks. They take it off of one truck and they put it onto the truck, the brown truck that comes to your house. I was part of getting the packages off these big 18-wheeler trucks. And then, we processed it throughout the facility, and then it eventually got put onto one of those brown trucks that came to your house. And the reason why I chose to work at UPS was because I heard that they pay for tuition reimbursement. And it was a good job to have. I mean, come 18 years old, it was like, wow, it'd be pretty cool to have a job at UPS. I mean, what do I know at 18? I didn't know. So I got a job there. And then I was valet parking on the weekends to make extra money, because that was almost like being a bartender. You'd make a lot of money in tips when you valet parked cars. Mm-hmm. So I started at UPS and I started working there. And I mean, I learned a tremendous amount from stress, pressure, being held accountable for beginning a job and ending a job. It was, that corporate experience that I got at 18 years old. So now I'm working at UPS, I'm going to school, and I'm burning myself out. Believe it or not, I'm like, wow, this is stressing me out. I can't, I was working a lot of hours. So I went on to I graduated from the 2-year at SUNY Farmingdale, and then I went to Hofstra University, which was literally in Uniondale, which is right next to UPS. And I went there, and I was trying to keep up with all the classes and go through it, but it was taking forever. So I went on the 13-year plan to graduate college. Oh. And you might be thinking, how the heck did you do 13 years? How is that even possible? Well, it's possible because I was spending so much time working, even though I was part-time at UPS, they gave you full-time hours, right? They paid you part-time, you worked full-time. Mm-hmm. So I'm working full-time and I'm working midnights. I go in at 11 o'clock at night and I was out at 5, 6 in the morning. And then I would go to college. So it was pretty hard on my system, the way, they don't have, night school really isn't, for your undergraduate. It becomes a little more difficult to do that. So I was going through that, and I was taking one class a semester. So now you can imagine how long it took me to graduate. So I'm working UPS, I'm doing some side jobs, making some extra money. And the way I got into IT was my brother-in-law was working at AT&T. And he's watching how you're working all these hours, I'm putting myself through school. So the work ethic is there. And he said, look, let me get your resume and I'll just hand it into the folks at AT&T and see what happens. So they did that. I went and got an interview for a sales position in New York City, and they loved me. And they were like, great, they offered me a job. But during that process, what I realized, in order to get into sales, because that's what it was, I never was in sales in my life. I worked at UPS. What did I know about sales? I actually had to get a test on sales. They actually tested you in sales. You might be thinking to yourself, what do you mean they tested you? Well, what they did was, before you were hired, they wanted to put you through a role play session in order to see if you'd pass role play to be hired. And if you didn't pass the role play, you weren't hired. So you're talking about a tremendous amount of pressure. I've never been in sales in my life. I mean, role play, exception of college, what did I know about a role play?
Right.
So the environment was, I had to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning in New Jersey. So I'm finishing work at UPS, throwing my suit inside my car, driving to New Jersey, and it was at a hotel. And they rented out 2 or 3 rooms in a hotel. Mm-hmm. And they basically hand you a piece of paper and they say, here's the role play. You're going to be sitting, you're a salesperson sitting in front of the chief financial officer and the CEO, and you need to sell based on this little role play. Oh, of course I was stressed, right? I've never done this before, but I went through it. I went through the role play, and obviously I passed because I spent the next 15, 16 years at AT&T. That's how I ended up in technology. It was not, it was basically organic how I got there, but it was not because I fell in love with technology and I always wanted to do it.
So that makes sense. So the circumstances dictated the path.
That's right.
Okay, that makes sense. And we have a lot in common there. And that could be another conversation about leadership and mentorship. You know, when I think about that in high school, I wasn't a big fan of high school either. And I think about the sports was one of the biggest things I remember about high school. Everything else got pushed aside. But I look at that and say we both worked to pay for our college education, and the circumstances actually dictate the path that you take. You know, so it's very that could be another conversation about right there for the especially for young aspiring people if we want to talk to them about how to actually decide what career you want to take. But that's interesting. And so
anything's possible. Anything's possible. It's just it's not everything is easy. So
it is. And when I think about when you're at you mentioned AT&T, and I think about sales, it actually gives me like a correlation back in my days when I was at CDW in sales. And back in those days, and I'm talking about the early 90s and that particular time frame, you actually would pick up the phone. It was a lot of telemarketing type sales where you would call somebody up on the phone, say, hey, I know you don't know me. Hey, my name is Maurice. And hey, look, I'm not going to take a lot of your time, blah, 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 blah. And say, you go through that kind of information. Can I send you out a brochure? Can I send you out a catalog? Can I follow up with you? So those kind of sales. And it's amazing how the sales industry has gone from the telemarketing part. And then we had companies like Salesforce come out on the scene where you actually had the CRMs kind of driving everything and saying, okay, call this person, follow up with this person, because it became automated. And then you had HubSpot that came out and added intelligence to us. And these are the customers that you need to focus on, you need to target on. When you think about the way the sales arena has actually evolved over the last 30 years, what would you say the big difference would be in regards to sales? And then we'll get back to that technology part of the conversation.
This is a good conversation because as that saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes.
It is getting the attention of somebody is still, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. And I think it's only become more complex because now there's so many different technologies that are competing against getting their attention. So you have so many social media platforms, people spending time on Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Telegram, WhatsApp. There's everything. The phone's buzzing constantly, emails coming in, and it's how do you get somebody's attention? So while tools have made it easier or have let you be aware of somebody to pay attention to or who to follow up on, sales is still sales. You still have to get the attention of somebody. And when I started at AT&T, I was never in sales. I never made a cold call in my life. And they handed me a list of 100 companies and said, go get business.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had no idea what I was doing. That is just, there's from a fear perspective, there's getting on stage, public speaking. And then I think somewhere on that list is cold calling.
Yeah.
To pick up the phone and call somebody, the amount of rejection that you have to face it's insurmountable at times. You walk out of a day in the office feeling like you were the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. You're called names, you're hung up on, they don't want to talk to you. So it was just boot camp of calls after calls after calls. And now if you've watched how things have changed, and you look at all the technologies and how to get in front of a client and get your message out, a lot of the things haven't changed. Your message has to be concise.
Yes.
With all those technologies, they say people's attention span is that of a goldfish now. It's 6 seconds. If you can't get their attention, you've lost their attention. Something else is going to get their attention. So it becomes, are you calling them? Well, yes, it still works, but can you get them on the phone? Not everybody answers their phones.
Right.
Especially with all the telemarketing calls of, your car warranty, right? How many times were you getting calls about that? You just stopped answering your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's emails. Unless you're very specific or you're offering them type of support that's extremely specific to what they're doing, they're just going to delete your email. If it's too long, they're not going to pay attention to it. Social media perspective, how are you trying to get them? So, we could talk a little bit more about this, but as much as things have changed, it still comes back to how do you get their attention? And getting their attention, even for me in being in sales, somebody has to get my attention by telling me something I didn't know.
Right.
And unless I figure out what that is, I'm not going to get their attention. So that's, I still see things haven't really changed, just a different median and how to get to it.
Kurt, I 100% agree with that. And I like how you mentioned that before it was actually more based off of volume, you would just call, but now it's actually going back. You have to be very strategic about it. And it's kind of like you really doing more of a psychologist in a way. You have to look at the behaviors. You have to understand, what does this customer want to hear that's going to actually bring value to them? Because their time is going to be very valuable. Your time is very valuable. And I think that the more mature that the sales team and the more maturity that they actually have, you actually use those analytical type tools and saying, you know what, these are the specific markets you should probably target. And then if you know the industry well, you know what they're looking for. You're right. You have a few seconds. I like how you mentioned that the attention of a goldfish. You got 6 seconds to actually go back and say something to that individual that's going to impress them. Would you kind of agree with that too?
Yes. It is. You have to be targeted. And then, so I'll give you an example. Something that got my attention probably 2 years ago, was an email came out to me from, I believe, I don't remember which kind of company it was, because it wasn't important to me any longer, but it got my attention because I had already done it. And here it is. An email came to me from some type of accounting company saying, are you aware of the Employee Retention Tax Credit, ERTC, from the government? You can get up to $26,000 per employee from 2020 to 2021, simply by having employees. Were you aware of that? That got my attention because I did not know about it. So I didn't use them because I had ADP. So I already had a solution. I didn't need their services. If I didn't have ADP, I absolutely would have been speaking to them, because they told me something I did not know. And it was very specific and directed to a business owner. And every time I think about outreach, I think about how can I be that way? But then you're right. Every industry is different. Every client is different. So it comes down to how much time do you have to spend on each client in order to be very direct and very laser focused. It's not easy.
It's definitely challenging. I agree with you. So when I think about that, I probably should have mentioned this before to our audience. You heard Kurt talk about his experience with AT&T, and he's worked with some other organizations as well. So right now you are the president and chief operating officer of DCT Strategy, correct? I make sure I had said it correctly. And maybe you can actually, if you can do a correlation, because now that we see the differences in the marketplace from yesterday, and even more focused on digital transformation today, how do you actually gear your staff up and your employees to actually say, hey, look, things are a little bit different now. What are you doing to kind of like embed digital transformation so they can actually, your employees can actually sell the value? And I like how you mentioned what I think we kind of circled around this a little bit. Everybody in the organization brings value. Now, anybody that you come to contact the organization, I think that they can bring some kind of value add, whether it's a 30-second elevator pitch or talking to a friend, because you never know. But when I think about that, what can you give us some little challenges or some different opportunities that you guys have come across in digital transformation where you actually helping your employees to say, let's talk about that value add?
Sure. So the setup of my organization is, it's a lot of consultants. So a lot of them, I mean, there's a few from an internal perspective, accountants and things of that nature that have, that inside operations part of the business, but everybody else is consultants. So they've well versed on digital transformation itself, but to talk a little bit about staying up and staying ahead of the times and understanding what is out there and what clients would need, that comes down to constant self-improvement, studying, seeing what's happening in industry, talking to clients, getting the feedback. So that's what we do. We spend a lot of our time when we're speaking to clients, understand what their challenges are, solving their challenges. And then you move to the next customer and you have the background from the challenges of one customer, where the industry is going with the tools, and then you apply that knowledge to the next circumstance. So it becomes real life understanding, and that's how we handle it from that perspective. But now they're sharing their own unique perspectives, because every consultant has a different approach to solving a problem, right? That's the wonderful part about things is you and I can solve a problem, but we may approach it from different perspectives. It doesn't mean either perspective is wrong. It just means we arrived at the end point in a different direction. So I do like that uniqueness because everybody has a different unique contribution to the matter. And I also, just to add one point, is, believe it or not, everybody is in sales.
Yeah, I agree.
They may not, some of the listeners here might say, I'm not a salesperson, but you are. You're selling yourself every single day. You're selling yourself to your spouse. You're selling yourself to your friends. You're selling yourself to your manager or your supervisor, to the CEO. You're selling yourself when you go on an interview. You're selling yourself when you go to a restaurant and you're trying to get a reservation. You're constantly selling yourself. You may not believe it or might not understand it, but if you don't put the best, your best person forward or your best representation forward, then you're going to notice that you're not going to get things in return. So, we're all selling. So I do agree on your point that everybody's got a contribution. Everybody can be selling the company. Everybody can help sell the services. We just approach it a little bit different as to how you ask the question, because everybody has a very strong background in digital transformation. But I mean, we could talk about, some use cases and how we solved certain things, if you'd like.
Yeah, can you just give us one quick use case that you guys, how you use that and for digital transformation? Just one use case.
Sure. And then just from a digital transformation, I know it's one of those buzzwords.
Yes,
right?
Yes, you're right.
It encompasses so much. I mean, some of the degrees here on the wall. I went to continuing education at MIT. So, back to your earlier question, is really how do you further self-improvement? And one of them is on the 5 building blocks of digital transformation, right? And it goes through each one of them. Accountability matrix and shared customer insights, right? There's a lot of different building blocks to it, but it really comes down to it's people. People have to change how they go into business, how they interact with their customers, how they roll out products and services. So digital transformation is a catchphrase, or it's a term used, but it could be so many things, and it never stops, right? So an example of things that people would understand would be, say maybe an Uber or a Microsoft or Amazon. I mean, they are digitally transformed companies where their internal infrastructures are they're seamless across the world, right? They're using the same systems, they have the same connectivity, they're most likely using the same CRM systems, the same finance systems, the same partner systems. So whether you're in China or you're in Europe or you're in the US, the onboarding is going to be the same. They may have some governmental restrictions, perhaps, as how they do filing, reporting, et cetera, but their infrastructure should be the same globally, so they're not reinventing the wheel everywhere they go. So their partner system would be the same. So if you want to be on board to be a partner with Amazon or Amazon or something like that, or Google, you're going to file the same paperwork in Europe, getting on the same visual GUI interface as you would in the US. It's one, across the board. And so from an infrastructure standpoint, they want to make sure they're seamless. And then it becomes, how do I provide new products and services to customers in a digital way, right? Or a way that's different than how I'm doing it today. So an example would be, so Uber, if they want to roll out a new product and service, they don't have to recreate the wheel internally. They already have their systems in the line. Their people already understand how the business runs. They'll just roll out a new feature or a new product offering. Like they'll say something like, oh, look at this for your license plate. It'll pop up onto the app and say, look at the person's license plate and make sure the person knows who you are. Or the new one they put up where instead of taking an Uber now, if you want to book one in advance, it's not hard for them to do it. They just do it because the infrastructure is already there. They just roll out a new product or service. But the biggest part is people themselves. How do you get people to change? So if you take a legacy company, it's very difficult for them to make a lot of changes because their systems are so embedded. The systems are so legacy. They have to make so many changes. And the people themselves are such a large organization. It takes so much for them to make that change. And I know that any company, the hardest resistance you get is from people not wanting to change.
Right.
So if you roll out a new IP phone system everybody's confused. Nobody knows how to operate that. What do I do? They're all thumbs in how to work things. So from a digital transformation perspective, our approach is typically from speaking to the CEOs and understanding that there is going to be a change in the organization, and a change has to start with the people, because once you begin with a digital transformation of a company, it never changes. It's never over. You constantly have to improve. You're constantly adding new products and services. You're constantly changing the infrastructure. You're constantly improving the infrastructure. You're bringing out the next greatest software that's going to improve your business. So that's kind of how we would approach it. And the use cases themselves are always around really sitting down with the people first and understanding that this is a marathon, and this is a change for people, not only your business going forward.
It makes sense. And I was thinking about that. One of the things that we do, especially when it comes to like AI, and we think about our security analysts. And these guys are the like the level 1 type individuals. So they have to be the individuals that's watching the monitor boards and looking for like 0-day type malicious attacks, and looking for, all the little nuances that happen. But for them, every day there's something that pops up, and every day they have to go back and look at this. You have to change, you have to adapt. And one of the things we're trying to do is actually create some AI tools so they can actually go back and identify, hey, look, you have, say, for example, this particular manufacturer switch on your particular network. This is going to pertain to you. So we're trying to make it a little bit more intelligent so that they don't have to go back and read all these different articles, because this AI just flagged their device. And that we can even, we're trying to zero it down so you know which device it is and which models that can be effective with it. So that kind of reduces it. But you're right, it's changed. And people are resistant to that. Or they can get into a situation where every day it's the same thing over and over and over again, where it's so mundane that they miss it, because they're used to looking at it and they just kind of, let me just scan it real quick, and they miss that scan. So 100%, you're right. It changes something that sometimes can be a little resistance there. Sometimes it gets mundane, and sometimes people some people just I guess just don't want to do it.
Yeah. And it's very important for the leadership of any organization, right? Even within your own company. If everybody gets used to doing things, it's like things were done a certain way, they're always done that way. People love to stay within something that's what they're used to, right? A structured way. And when something changes, it throws things off. So from a leadership perspective, they have to continually give that messaging out to the organization of what they're doing, where they're going, why they're doing that, why that's good for the customer experience, why they're making a change. It is constant speaking to the organization and understanding what it is that's being done and why. And then it'll kind of break down some of that resistance to change that people normally have. I mean, we're all guilty of it. If you give me a new laptop, I gotta figure out, what to do. New cell phone, and I stay with Apple, so it's kind of easy. But if you switch me to a Samsung, I haven't played with a Samsung in 8-10 years.
Exactly.
So I'm confused. I have to relearn it. So it's,
interesting. So let's shift a little bit, and we talked a little bit about the past. We talked about today, what's happening today with what we see that's going on around us. What do you think about the future? When you think about, and I read an article that you wrote on your LinkedIn page, and it talked about AI and the metaverse. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and give us what are your kind of like predictability? Not going to hold you to anything, but everything's like, it's all predictive. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but you and I have been doing this long enough. We can see the trend. We can see where things are migrating to. Kirk, can you elaborate a little bit about that article and what your thoughts are?
Sure. So it was the intersection of AI and the metaverse. And so how I got there, I pride myself on trying, think of it like this, an analogy of you're driving on a road and that road is curving up ahead. And every leader of every organization is trying to see what's beyond that curve before they get to that curve, right? I mean, it's probably the analogy, because nobody knows what's beyond that curve unless you have a drone flying above telling you. You're not sure. You have some inputs, you have some gut feelings, you're taking the inputs from everything around you, but you don't know what's up there, because like the butterfly effect, one thing could change another thing, and you're not sure. So I tend to do a lot of self-introspection by, taking courses, reading a lot of periodicals, listening to what the Microsofts are doing, the Apples are doing, what consumers are looking at, me as a consumer, what do I like, what do I expect, right? I think we all have to take a look, some look at ourselves and say, what are we thinking? And by putting that all together, while we work with customers on AI, digital transformation, cybersecurity, IoT, we have experts in those areas as well. While I look at all of that, and I'm putting all these articles out talking about AI and speaking to a lot of companies about AI and how they could put it into their business, like you were saying, personalization. How do you get down to the customer experience? Like you said in cybersecurity, how can you personalize it to that customer to make it unique and provide them the information that's important to them, which will change their customer experience and allow them to adapt to their environment? That's extremely important from an AI perspective. And then I started thinking to myself, okay, there's a lot of investments being made in the metaverse. Where is AI? What's next with the metaverse? How do they come together, and where are things going? So I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about these things. I don't watch a lot of sports with the exception of lacrosse. I don't spend Sundays watching football. I guess I'm thinking a lot about things or reading or spending time with my family. And I don't have that time to watch all the sports, even though I'm extremely competitive. Probably a side note, probably I don't watch a lot of these sports because if I invest myself, I'll become extremely depressed if my team doesn't win because I'm so competitive. So I think I do it from a self-protection standpoint. I don't want to be miserable the next day. But where did I get there? So you have the AI, you see what AI is doing, the capabilities. I mean, that's a conversation. Where do I see AI going? I see AI and a lot of things I put out there as the best of AI is the intersection of humans and AI. I think you get the best from that. As long as the government puts controls on what can or can't do, government controls and policies, which you're starting to talk about now, that should eliminate or at least hold back the Terminator, Skynet, type of scenarios, which everybody rightly should be worried about. AI does have the ability to go intelligent and to make us a non-factor. It's whether we like it or not, people think it's true. You see some of these interviews where they're interviewing an AI robot with almost a humanistic face and saying, should we be worried about, robots and people? And they were like, the answer was not yet. I mean, that's got to worry you a little bit.
Right, it does. And you just bring up a thought. I read an article last week of a woman that actually received a call from her daughter, what she thought was her daughter. And we know we can actually go to a couple of different, I'm not gonna say any names, a couple of different applications that we can do right now. Like this right here, this conversation here, I can create a duplicate of your voice, and I can actually make really do something really great. So I'm making a commercial. And he said, hey, I never made that commercial with Maurice, but it's your voice and on that commercial, like a radio type commercial, because you can actually replicate that voice. And what happened in that particular situation with the woman was that somebody impersonated her daughter's voice because she was in college and she did a whole bunch of different debates and all kind of different, where she had recordings out there with her voice. They took it, they made her sound like her, called the mother, hey, mom, I'm in trouble, I need some money. People always trying to play scams on it. But the point was that somebody actually was able to replicate that child's voice and make it seem, and where the mother couldn't tell the difference. And the mother can tell the difference, but she knew that it was still uncanny the way that she was asking for the money. That's what it was, that behavior was not normal. And that's what made her stop and say, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. And then she got everybody involved, the officials, the authorities, everything and they figured out that somebody did it. My point was that with AI, and I like how you mentioned that, we probably do need to come up with some kind of regulations to say, okay, we see the good, we can see what it's going to do for healthcare, we can see what it's going to do as far as efficiencies and productivity in the workplace. We get that. Everybody's looking for that. We're very rah-rah about that. But we also have to recognize the bad, because not everybody has the same intentions, And I think that, and it is in a way, I'm going to say this kind of right here, you want the regulations to come out because we need to have somebody with the regulations, but we need to make sure it's the right people making the regulations. And I'll say it that way. That's a better way to say it. But you're right, and I can see that. And when you think about metaverse, because I'm thinking about with like VR, for example, thinking about all these different things. There's so many different aspects of how that can actually make our lives better, but somebody can actually use that against us too. Would you agree with that?
Everything throughout time. Cars bring you places, but they can kill people. Guns, nuclear technology, drugs, it's good positive, it's negative. And that's the way it is. You put things around it. So yeah, you're speaking about deep fake, and that is extremely concerning to any company out there. Let's take it a step further. Somebody impersonates the CEO's voice, calls financing, says, cut the check, not cut the check, direct deposit into this account. They are not going to challenge the CEO at all. The next thing, from a consumer perspective, here's the challenge. Anybody that buys a house, you have to deal with a closing company, right? Closing title. Everything on those documents says, do not accept a call from anybody, or do not take any emails from anybody saying deposit this account. You have to hear from us. Well, you know what? With a deep fake, they could say everything that they are, pick a call, and you can have $500,000 instead of going to the company that's closing the house, goes to the bad actors. So there's a company called 11 Labs out there, which is, part of the whole AI world. They're coming out. It's a nice thing. I saw it on LinkedIn as well. They're coming out with a tool that can actually say whether or not that speech has been AI changed with their technology.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's pretty cool. You're going to need a lot more of this. You're going to need something saying, is that AI deepfake? Is this really the person? Then you get into blockchain. It's going to be a lot of that to say, is this really who that person says they are? And then as you keep moving into it, then you get into the metaverse. And you asked me a little bit sooner. So where's AI? Where's the metaverse? So metaverse. So today we can go onto the internet. Everybody knows you can go to Google, or you can get onto the internet. Everybody knows how to get onto the internet, just like everybody knows how to get onto a highway. Getting onto the metaverse today, there is no one like, this is the entrance to the metaverse. That metaverse that they're trying to create is not there yet. It's not like the World Wide Web where it's all there. You're looking at 3 to 5 years before that's where it is. But are there things like metaverse? Yes. There's gaming like Roblox or Fortnite, right? There are things you could still do from a metaverse type of way, and it's driven by AI. So when people talk about metaverse, like Meta itself, changing from Facebook to Meta, they're making a lot of bets there, but it's not there yet, right? It's AR, it's VR, XR technologies, right? Just talk about in general, have the metaverse itself. But how do you get there? What do you do? And that's why I wrote the article on intersection of AI and the metaverse, because there are things that companies can do today. You need AI to make that metaverse type of experience. And an example would be, like if you're playing Fortnite or if you're playing Roblox, they're trying to push to that next generation that have all the devices, that are up on Discord, that are up on Fortnite, up on Roblox. I mean, my children are on that. I don't play them, but they're on it. And they're starting to put businesses on there to drive that. So an example would be, a bank in India that is a very like a community bank here that not many people know about and would go to. You think about the 3 big banks, but you don't think about really the community banks that much. The community bank took that and they put themselves on the metaverse like Roblox, and they put their bank up there so kids can go to that bank and see the name of that bank. And they were given digital currency when they went to that bank. And they give them as much digital currencies in rupees that they can then take and go out into the real world, go walk to that bank, give the digital currency they got in Roblox, and open a bank account. Think of the marketing. Think of what you're doing with the next generation of building them up to be cool, to be, you're in a metaverse, and now they're going to drive the next generation to their bank because their bank is cool. So that's where it's going. Nike did the same thing with swoosh shoes in Nike land. I think they made like 185 million in 6 months of selling digital shoes. Yeah. Probably on track to make $1 billion. But people think, okay, but what is that? It's not tangible. What's tangible to the up and coming generation to actually say, well, Nike's cool. Let me go buy Nike shoes. Or that bank, let me go bank with them because I understand how that works. So where do I see it? The metaverse, what we all know and get to experience, it's going to be there 3 to 5 years. You have Apple with the glasses and what they're doing, what they're trying to help you get into. But there are businesses can take advantage of it right now on things like digital twins, where they recreate their entire environment of people, machines, processes. They can create an entire world, and they could do things like training. They could train new personnel of seeing what's happening, how processes are done, et cetera. So that's why I wrote the article, because AI is there. Metaverse, there are a lot of applications for it. You can tie the two together. And then back to the original point, AI can be scary, but it's also great when you work with people, especially when you come up with the tools to be able to catch deep fakes and catch the bad things. And when government policies come out, that should really probably prevent some of the bad things from happening. So that's why I wrote the article.
That makes sense. And I was going to ask you another question, but you answered that question. You said 3 to 5 years. And because I'm looking at this, and even when you mention that, I see like digital coins, and I know that where the government is still talking about it. You're not going to see it on the nightly news or whatever. You have to go back and read about it with U.S. coins. But I can see digital coins. I can see that we're going to migrate in that particular area sometime soon. I can also see that education is going to change a lot. The way companies do business is going to change a lot, and you mentioned about training. Can you imagine the digital world where you can do digital training for your employees, and they may not even have to be in the office? you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that's there, it's here.
You take the use case of Walmart. Walmart has, they turn over people all the time. People come, they work there, they leave, work there, leave. They could build the entire, like their own metaverse of a store, bring people in for training, and it shows them everything to do. So they're already doing the training, already getting up to speed on how to work in a store without being pulled out, without having somebody else show them around. They could see everything. So from a ROI standpoint, it is much more immersive for them to learn, as opposed to sitting on a computer and doing a couple of training courses and then being thrown out on the floor and not be able to answer any questions. So you're right. There are so many use cases. And I say 3 to 5 years because if you look at AI has been around for a very, very long time.
Yes, I agree.
Right. But what changed? What changed was ChatGPT.
Yes.
GPT from 2019 to 2022 went from GPT-1 to GPT-3 and exploded.
Right.
And now the consumer said, holy cow, this is amazing. So that's what really sent this thing off. It was already available. It's already being used. But now, now the use cases are out of this world. And now if companies aren't embracing AI, if companies are not using it, they're going to be surpassed by their competitors. And they're going to be looking, they're gonna be looking ahead saying, oh my God, I didn't do this, and now I'm falling behind.
You're right. You look at that, they'll have the Sears and Roebuck type experience where they're saying, what just happened? And where we could talk to your children and my younger kids and say they don't even know what that is. So what Sears and Roebuck, what's that? They don't know.
Uber's a threat to taxis. Right. Blockbuster and Netflix. I think I read a story from Mark Randolph he put it out on LinkedIn too, where they were in a position where they needed money to keep going with the business. They approached Blockbuster to get sold, and they came out and they were like, great, this is awesome what you guys are doing. How much? And they were like, we spent $50 million. So let's $50 million. And they laughed them out of the room.
Yes.
Laughed them out of the room. And now there is no more Blockbuster, maybe one store somewhere. And now Netflix is worth $280 billion. So that's digital transformation. That's innovation. That's continuing to move, as opposed to a company believing that they have a lock on their business and they don't need to innovate and to transform. Because this is the point I'll make. Sears, you brought that up. I remember Sears. You remember Sears. If you ask our kids about Sears, they don't know what you're talking about. If you ask some kids about Bruce Lee, they don't know what you're talking about. And that's something that every customer and every business leader needs to understand, that the next generation is coming up. You know what they know about? They know about what they're being told right now.
Right.
And they expect that. So unless you're giving them a Discord type of experience, unless you're giving them a virtual experience, unless you're giving them information back quickly, instant gratification, then as a business, who are you selling to? My generation is getting older. Yes, we have the money, but the next up and coming generation, they're spending money too. They're being given money by their parents.
Right.
That is the generation that you have to innovate for, because before you know it, in 10, 15 years, you're going to be like, oh my God, where am I? I didn't keep up. And now they went somewhere else.
Right. And I'll say this in a kind of in conclusion here. When I think about the younger generation, like generational Z, I said the way they learn and how they're going to adapt to their change is going to be completely different than the way we did. And they're going to move a lot faster. And they got better tools than we had, so it's be interesting to see how we educate them, how we actually pass our learning skills and all the experience that we have, pass it to them so they can actually use it with the machines, with the AI, with the machine learning and everything, and how they can take it to another level. Should be interesting.
Well, we're doing it right now on podcasts, so at least they're watching podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great. Look, it was wonderful to get to speak to your audience. I hope everybody learned a lot from this, and certainly they could always ask either one of us and anything else, right? We'll talk about anything else that might be beneficial to them.
This has been I agree. This has been a great conversation. And Kurt, I'd like to one day bring you back, and we're going to set up some panels in the Q3 of this year and have a panel discussion. I think that you would really enjoy being on our panel.
I appreciate it. We'd love to. Thank you so much.
All right. So everyone, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast today, where humanity meets technology. We've had a really great conversation here on digital transformation. As we mentioned, digital transformation can be anything. It can be AI, it can be metaverse, it can be cybersecurity, it can be a lot of different things, different elements that make up digital transformation. But our point was to actually get across and how it actually impacts our lives and our businesses, and how it impacts it today and how it will impact us in the future. So we want to thank you all for joining, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
Bye-bye.